Good morning, I'm Ron O'Brien, Market and Derivative Strategist with Interfood Incorporated. This is your Global Dairy Brief for Monday morning, January 13th, 7:53 on the East Coast. Well, kicking off things here, we're seeing a little bit of support in the Class 3 and cheese complex this Monday morning. Market was quiet overnight, but we are trading the January cheese contract back up over $2.02 a pound, and the Class 3 19 higher in February to $20.40. We currently price Class 3 milk at $22.21 per hundredweight. So still behind the eight ball. The February contract is down at $20.40, but markets are slowly moving higher this morning. The 2014 average stands at $18.63 a hundredweight, up 3 cents. Class 4 futures steady to 6 higher here. That's milk going into the butter and powder plants. We're trading $22.43 a hundredweight in February, while we price Class 4 milk with the latest weekly averages at $22.15. On Friday, WASDE came out, World Agriculture Supply and Demand Estimates. Most traders are focusing on that report for grain prices and supplies. However, they do milk projections. They're expecting cheese prices to average between $1.76 and $1.84 a pound this year. They expect butter between $1.5150 and $1.6250. Non-fat dry milk between $1.8050 and $1.8650, and whey between 55 and 58 cents a pound. Already, all of those prices have been more than exceeded by 10, 20, 30% in some cases, but they did raise the price of cheese and non-fat dry milk pretty substantially from the prior month's report. Class 3 prices with those products are expected to average between $17.80 and $18.60, again, as we price milk above $22. A Class 4 expected to trade between $19.80 and $20.70, again, as we price over $22. So USDA a bit behind the eight ball, but at least they didn't go too far ahead of the curve. So a little bit supportive, but again, well behind where we currently stand in the markets right now. So don't really do much that much for us. Overnight, I saw on the NZX, the Oceania exchange, we saw Jan skim milk powder up $60 to $49.60 a ton. That gives us an S&P price of about $2.25 a pound in January. Our January non-fat dry milk futures price is $2.01. Different product, but essentially still pretty big spread there. The April contract on the NZX was $215.46 overnight, and interesting, though, we had talked about the June contract, which was up over $400 after that GDT, or the same day as the GDT last week. This morning, down $410 to $4,700 a ton. Still, though, well above our markets. That's in the $2.13 per pound range. Our June non-fat dry milk contract trading on Friday at $1.6950. So one above $2.10, one below $1.70. That spread should collapse. Not sure which way it's going to go, but still we're expecting a strong milk powder demand going into Q1, let alone Q2. Talking about whole milk production in New Zealand still remains more profitable than making other products out of that milk. And expected that situation should persist well into Q2 as well. We've been talking about butter moving at the CME. It was steady on Friday to $1.6750. Butter futures at the CME hanging right around $1.70 to $1.72 a pound. No trading this morning, but butter fat globally still tightening and strong in Europe. We talk WMP production being a major culprit of that. However, we exported over 90,000 tons of butter during 2013. That's about double 2012's prices, and that's here in the States. That's keeping butter tight here. We saw old news, but still we're talking about it. Butter stocks below year earlier levels in the month of November for the first time since July 2011. Butter stocks in that November report, again, it's January, but the November report of 121.4 million pounds, that was 46% lower than the November of 2012. Butter stocks down 33% from October levels, October of 2013, and that was the largest monthly drawdown in 2 decades. But that's butter fat in the States. It's keeping this market pretty tight. Again, the spread between front month and the spot market, though, relatively close to each other. And wouldn't be surprised to see more old crop butter come to the exchange and this 170 price to be resisted. However, once we get past the month of March, we should see that old crop begin to tighten, as these large co-ops, especially on the West Coast, really need to build inventories for use later in the year. Over on the other side of the Atlantic, though, the EU market prices of butter are more than double intervention prices. And those stocks continue to be extremely tight. 40% year-over-year increase in EU 28 butter prices. So we can talk about butter all day long, but let's get back out of here into cheese. Cheese futures still well behind the curve of $2.20 a pound for the spot market. Only back in 2008, I believe, was the only time we were above $2 in the month of January, and that was only for about 5 days we stood at those levels. Yeah, blocks and barrels are over $2 for only 5 days. So market's expecting a pullback. We don't get the pullback. We need to see the futures accelerate to the upside. Again, cheese exports between the months of September and November were up 45%. That's cheese exports out of our country. And at the same time, total cheese domestic use was up 2.5% in that time period. So strong exports, strong use for total cheese. Not so much American cheese in the States, but total cheese. Exports of American cheese during that Sep to Nov time period were up 73% year over year. However, domestic use was down 2%. But it looks like stocks are at least available stocks tradable at the CME are probably the tightest we've ever seen in history. Although we're about 8.5 cents under the highest price that we've ever seen. So real quiet butter on the Eurex this morning, up 45 euros per ton, pushing 4,000. So still strong markets for fat. I wouldn't call a top to this market anytime soon. Perhaps in cheese, but again, we're still hearing that 40-pound blocks are tight. You need me for anything, you can find my contact information on the top of dairypost.com. At 10:40 Central Time, we break and go live to the CBOT where I broadcast real-time bids and offers of blocks, barrels, non-fat dry milk, and butter. Make sure you jump on that call if you haven't yet. And I send out an email in the mornings about top 10, 20 stories that hit the market when I'm seeing them in the morning, and some pricing indications. If you don't get that email, again, make sure you send me your contact information and I'll put you on it. Again, that's dairypost.com. You have a great morning. We'll talk